fourth explainer video in a series Zach talks to about AI, in which I, Zach, talk to you about AI. And I've chosen for today to talk about the question, do you need the state of the art? Do you need, in particular, LLMs for your product development? Let's set the stage a little bit here. So right now we live in an environment of fear and terror. Leadership teams are absolutely terrified everywhere that they are going to be disrupted by some clever upstart or other competitor who figures out the secret sauce for plugging these new AI capabilities into a product that completely causes their product to become outdated. Nobody wants to be written up in the next version of The Innovator's Dilemma as the modern day version of Kodak, Polaroid, or AOL. No one wants that humiliation. And leaders are absolutely terrified of that. And so, rather than being caught off guard and discovering that a new technology has come along and your company isn't using it, leadership has swung the pendulum way in the other direction, and they have often mandated the use of AI for product development, which is fine insofar as it goes, but oftentimes that mandate takes the form, build a product that does X using LLMs. So in other words, they have a particular kind of product or application in mind, and they are mandating that the technical teams develop this product and they must use LLMs to do so. This creates loathing. Your engineers, if you've done this, are overwhelmingly likely to be saying mean things behind your back. I am seeing this in conversations with former colleagues, friends, all over the place. Engineers are saying the meanest, nastiest things about you behind your back. Why? Because LLMs are probably not suitable for a randomly chosen problem. And on the other hand, there is a huge toolbox of very mature, very well understood, cheap, simple machine learning tools that you can reach for instead, that have been around for a long time and actually work great. Those tools are easy, they're very well understood, they're very battle tested, and they are orders of magnitude cheaper and more reliable, and they have all sorts of other benefits that LLMs do not have. So your very best engineers are going to be the ones who are the most irritated by this mandate and the most insulted by it, honestly, because they are the ones who care about using the right tool for the right job. So if the tool is being mandated for a job it's inappropriate for, they are going to start to develop a sense of loathing. So what happens? What happens is interesting and oftentimes subtle and easy to miss. Let's suppose, to make this example more concrete, let's suppose that you are in a business where you want to develop a product recommendation system. That's a very common and familiar kind of application that frequently uses machine learning to accomplish. And let's suppose that you have mandated that this product recommendation system shall be developed using LLMs. What's very likely to happen in this case is that your engineers are going to realize that LLMs are simply not the right tool for the job. And if they're good engineers, they care about producing the right tool for the right job using the right technology. And so they will reach for one of the extremely well understood and battle tested techniques from machine learning, which have been proven over the years to be extremely good at product recommendations. Then, in order to satisfy the letter of the law, if not the spirit, they will use LLMs and dress up the product recommendation system so that it looks like LLMs are being used for the important core of that capability. but in fact, it's going to be the product recommendation system is actually being pulled around by an older model that works well. Interestingly, the product will work. Right? This leads to a product that works. What it also leads to is engineering teams that are highly demoralized. They feel like frauds, and you have developed a product that is much more expensive and difficult to maintain and convoluted than it actually requires. So you got to understand whether the product actually needs an LLM. There are some very serious costs to using an LLM. Of course, there's the literal costs. They're very expensive. They are also orders of magnitude slower than existing machine learning models. So if it may take 5 or 10 seconds to get a response from an LLM for a relatively simple query, whereas a product recommendation system that's built by using tried and true machine learning techniques might be able to output 1,000 recommendations per second without breaking a sweat. So we're really talking about orders of magnitude difference, and that translates into orders of magnitude more cost if you're operating at scale. The other thing that is a huge disadvantage to LLMs, depending on your particular use case, is that LLMs are non-deterministic. There's randomness built into how these LLMs return their responses. What that means is you can feed exactly the same information to an LLM 2 times and get back different responses. Oftentimes this doesn't matter so much, but if you are in a business where you need to establish a relationship with your customers that's built on trust, and that trust requires consistency, then there is no faster way to erode that trust than by answering the same question 2 different ways, 2 different times. Along these lines, also LLMs have a disadvantage of being black boxes. They are not understood. We understand the math of them. We understand, of course, how they're architected. We understand all the processes that have gone into building and training them. However, in a very deep sense, we do not yet understand how they reason or how they work. As a result, if you are in a sector where you are required to produce explanations of why certain decisions were made, particularly if you're making, say, creditworthiness decisions, or healthcare decisions, or insurance approvals, then a black box is not going to be appropriate. It'll actually be breaking the law. And next, they're also unpredictable. You might have a use case that looks really good for an LLM, and you might test it 1,000 times with 1,000 different questions and get back the right answer for all 1,000 of them. And then the 1,001st, you might get nonsense back. That just goes along with it being a non-deterministic black box that's not well understood. There are ways, of course, of trying to mitigate each of these disadvantages, but they're very real disadvantages. So if you're going to take on those disadvantages, you had better be able to benefit from the unique capabilities that these LLMs do bring. Right? The most important capability that LLMs bring to the table is that they essentially solve the natural language processing problem. They understand and can generate natural language in whatever language you prefer extraordinarily well. This was a huge leap forward in natural language processing techniques. So if you have a use case that relies really heavily on being able to understand language, then LLMs start to look a lot more plausible as the solution. The other thing that they buy you, this is kind of the flip side of the unpredictable, non-deterministic nature, is that non-determinism and unpredictable output also buys you a lot of flexibility and the ability of the models to take into account a great deal of context. So you can have extended conversations with it, and it can pull back in information that was discussed much earlier in the conversation. You can add documents and context and background in a way that's extremely flexible. That's the benefit that you get from having this non-deterministic, unpredictable black box. So if you are in a problem space where those benefits are so important that they outweigh the significant costs, then you should be reaching for an LLM. So how do you do this? How do you avoid having your engineers revolt against you by being forced to produce products with inappropriate technology? Well, you have to make sure that the product actually needs an LLM. In order to do that, there has to be collaboration and iteration between product and engineering. Your product people will hopefully understand the pain points and needs of your customers. Your engineers will understand the capabilities and trade-offs among different techniques. And somewhere in that conversation, in a back and forth iterative conversation between product and engineering, you might say the Venn diagram with of the circle containing customer needs and the Venn diagram of LLM capabilities is going to intersect somewhere. And it's the job of this collaboration to find that intersection. This can't be emphasized enough. This is an iterative process. It is very unusual that your first idea is going to be appropriate for this. So you have to have technical subject matter experts and product experts who are willing to listen to each other. All right, takeaways. First of all, don't let fear drive your decisions. Fortunately, we have excellent medications, and therapy is very useful for this. So if you discover that fear is driving your decision-making process, then you need to take a little bit of time and get that sorted out with a professional. You have to understand what LLMs are good for and what they're not good for. The trade-offs are extreme in this technology. LLMs are not a free lunch. They come with very valuable new capabilities, but at a significant cost. Then you have to allow time for iteration on product ideas. Top-down mandates on what to build how are simply very unlikely to succeed, and they will produce loathing on the part of your technical teams, and in the worst case scenario will produce outright deception about what's being built. Then finally, you'll be in a position to mandate the use of LLMs in your product development, and only if the benefits are truly important to that. If you have an application where LLMs are in fact the appropriate choice, then you're going to have exactly the opposite response from your engineering teams. You're going to produce a product that brings new kinds of value to your customers, and you're going to have technologists in your company who are enthusiastic about it. All right, that's going to wrap up this one. As always, all comments will be read and all suggestions will be taken seriously, and especially suggestions for topics that others might be interested in. Thank you.